Hello, everyone. It's Reno, Dino, Valentino, and Cecilia Rose coming at you with the inaugural, the very first episode of the comic dissection, where each week, we kind of have a comic book reading club. Well, that name was taken. And, you read it, we read it, and then we get together and, we talk about it. What we liked, what we didn't. And since we're recording this first episode during Pride Month, you may not get it for a couple years, but we're recording it during Pride Month of 2022.
The greatest year ever.
The greatest year. If you're listening to this years later, remember, 2022 was the greatest. It was so bad.
Honestly, it might be the greatest if you're listening to this in the future, though.
Oh no. That was dark. I love
real
it.
Dark.
I love it. So, because we're doing this during Pride Month, we decided DC did a Pride comic. This is their second one. They did one last year as well. And it's a collection of just one-shots. I think there's 8 little stories in it, or 10 little stories in it altogether. And each one celebrates a character or a sexuality that you should be prideful about. And, yeah. So, without further ado, let's start talking about this. And, Cecilia, I'm going to let you go first. I want your overall impression of the DC Pride outing. Like, where you think that they rose, where they fell, etc., etc.
Overall, I think they did a pretty good job. I really like the way the Super Pride and the one with Tim Drake. I really liked those 2 stories.
Yeah, we're going to try and go through them all. Each story, like, one by one. But, yeah.
I also really liked that Ivy and Harley got to have a nice, like, actual romantic... Because I was kind of concerned about how they would treat villains and sexuality.
Yeah.
Because there's a precedent for... not positive representations.
Well, let me just devil's advocate, and not really just devil's advocate, because I actually did think about this while I was reading this. As a person who only relates to villains, if I was, and spoiler alert, I would say I'm mostly straight. There's like 3 celebrity dudes that I would probably change teams for, but for the most part, I consider myself a straight white male. So I know what's actually going on and can give you the skinny, being the best of people. But yeah, if I identified more as a bisexual, for instance, and I wanted bisexual representation in comics, I would not look to the heroes. I would look to the villains. So I need an Ivy Harley. I need at least a few villains, and I'm very glad that Ivy and Harley got their.
Well, I'm just glad that they get to have their relationship isn't just about the sex, or just like it's not just raunchy, or it's not just, they actually seem to have like a genuine attachment and connection to each other, which I think is especially good for Harley, because her relationship with the Joker was very bad.
Well, I was kind of, and this, like, I think it would have been interesting, and they can still do this down the road, to show the cyclical nature of abuse. If there was like an issue of the comic, or maybe a few issues, where Harley started to exhibit Joker behavior towards Ivy, and Ivy had to like try and shut that shit down without, choking Harley with a vine or something. Like, it'd be neat to see, because I don't know, as much as I love Harley and Ivy as a couple. Like, I think that is a very cool, like, conglomerate. Like, everything I've seen with those 2 together, I like it. It makes sense for the characters, etc. But there is something to be said about how easily Harley got out of this incredibly abusive relationship and just, like...
Well, I don't know about the comics, but in the the show.
Oh yeah, in the show.
It isn't a.
It wasn't very. Yeah, it was not a clean break. Yeah.
It's a very she goes in and out of these.
Yeah, we're talking about the animated Harley Quinn show that DC did, and I don't know. I think everything's getting moved to HBO, but that's neither here nor there. But yes, in that show, she did keep falling back into that trap, and maybe there was some of that in the comics as well. But man, when you've been in an abusive relationship, like that stuff will. It
follows you.
Yeah, it's almost like being a recovering addict. Like, you never say, like, you still say, I'm an addict, like, forever, because there's always the chance if you do not police those behaviors, you can start mirroring past relationships. And, if those were all toxic cesspools, then, yeah, it's going to end bad for you. So, one question I wanted to ask, and we talked about this a little, off cast. What us professionals call it. But the fact that and I'm actually going to withdraw some of my issue. I was talking about how it seemed like there were a lot of second and third stringers, and there weren't any first stringers in the DC Pride book. But what I did not know when I said that is that right now Superboy is actually Superman, because Superman's like off planet fucking off somewhere. So he is currently Superman. Like, he is doing all the Superman things. He is fulfilling the role of Superman, which is one of the big three. I mean, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. That's DC's bread and butter. That's their big three. So it's almost a null and void statement. But I do think it was interesting that we were talking earlier about how characters, it's easier to have new characters come out as this, and there's less danger from backlash from neckbeards, and less danger of messing up your continuity or whatever. Yeah. Which is something that if comics want to start worried about, they probably should have done like 70 years ago, but neither here nor there. But yeah, were you happy with these characters? Did you know all the characters?
I honestly didn't know most of them.
I had to do some research myself.
Because
I will say there were like 5 different Robins in this comic. Did you not?
Well, I do know a little bit because I read the webtoons, the Batman family thing. Mm-hmm. So I do know a little bit about the different Robins.
Yes.
But I don't know
these Amazonian ladies, and Io, her lady friend. I knew Big Barda and Giganta.
I didn't know a lot of who these characters were.
Yeah, well, luckily, I did a little research. So,
awesome.
So as we go through the individual stories and kind of talk about them individually, I will try and drop what little knowledge that I learned. I think we should go through each story individually and then talk about at the end, kind of as a whole, if we thought that there was a good job. Because I will say, just at a glance, there were some of these that were so good, and then there were some that I was like, this is not a good story. Yeah, like it's good representation, but you can do that and also have a good story. Like, look at some of the other stories in this collection, and I think some of that is spacing. I think they put in. I'm gonna stop guessing at this and give you an actual count. Yeah, there are 12 stories in this, and it is. It's a thick comic, but it's not that thick. Yeah. So each story only gets like 5 or 6 pages, and I feel like a lot of them just could not tell a story in that spot. It was too confined. Like, in 6 pages, they just couldn't get wherever it was they were trying to go.
I would imagine, though, that comics like these that are collections of stories, part of the point of them is to get you interested in the characters enough that you go, like, find those characters in their own comics. Yeah. And so, I get it's a valid complaint.
It is probably an introduction, yes, for a lot of people, which is also one of the reasons why I think it is problematic that so many of the characters, you don't know who they are. And I don't think some of the stories do anything to tell you who they are. Yeah. And I have a few notes about that. But yeah.
Start with Super Pride.
Yeah, we'll start with Super Pride. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do, I actually did want to read... The introduction is from Nicole Maines, who is actually playing a character called Dreamer on a TV show, a DC show now. And man, she had some hot fire in her introduction.
Yeah,
she did the forward, and there were some really good. And I just wanted to read a couple of them because man, I just thought they were really good. So this is straight from Nicole Maines' mouth. Still, I've struggled with the feeling that our stories might not have appeal outside of our own community. Every time I would say to a writer the word queer or transgender, it felt forced, like I had to wedge it in there. That's because as a trans person, and queers, I know you know what I'm talking about here, I'm still not used to our stories being told. Like, that especially hit me because it did feel like some of this was pigeonholed in. Like you have a story, and then at the end it's like, oh yeah, also I'm gay. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. Like, and I don't know how much of that is just actual perception and how much is what she just said here about how...
I think some of it is, like I told you before, I was looking at who wrote some of these.
Mm-hmm.
I think straight writers can have more difficulty in telling queer stories.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it does feel kind of pigeonholed.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it does feel kind of like we have to make this character something to appeal to these people.
Right.
And that can be... It shows in different ways that they're not trying to make good stories. They're just trying to...
Right. Story first, characters, sexuality second.
Yeah.
Right.
It is... I think it's hard to find good representation in a lot of places. On the other hand, even exposing some people to, even if it's done pigeonholed and not in a artful way,
Mm-hmm.
so for some people that trans character in that story is the only trans person
that they know
of
or have ever known.
Yeah.
And
so it can be, she's not wrong.
Yeah. Oh. And a straight white male, I agree. She's not wrong. And you're not wrong either.
Straight white guy.
I definitely would not write as good of a story.
Well, even because I consider myself pansexual.
Right.
I'm not saying I would know how to write a good gay story. Because relationships are complicated, and the things that are important break down differently for different people in the different categories that you fit in.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd write a good religious story. Like, if you were... People put emphasis on different things. Yeah,
but trying to find something, I guess, in that's universal, I assume would be your goal. Like, because these stories, even though I'm a straight male, like, I saw relationships from my past in aspects of these stories. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, I've known people like that. It's both good and bad.
There are things that are universal, but I do think that there are also things that only gay couples have to go through.
Right. And absolutely. I'm just saying, as a straight man, my only hope would be to tap into the universals. And it would be very, at the very least, without doing a lot of research and talking to a lot of people in the know. It'd be very problematic for me to try and come at it from I know how you guys feel. No one wants to hear that.
How hard is it to be in love anyway?
Yeah. A waste of time. That's my philosophy. And just one more paragraph from her I wanted to read, and then we'll get into the actual stories. I loved this. From Wonder Woman paving the way for superheroes everywhere to Superman confronting xenophobia to Black Lightning making history as DC's first headlining black superhero. Comic books have always been how pop culture discusses topics that matter. So to those naysayers, I say this. You're only mad because for the first time, you're on the other side of the heat vision. And if you have found yourself on the wrong end of Superman's gaze, then perhaps this book needs to be in your hands more than mine. Like, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Maybe because I like the idea of, like, Superman just going out, like, laser fishing people.
Don't be a homophobe.
Hate gays.
And now you're on fire.
Yeah. This is how I give lessons. All right. So, yeah, Super Pride. What was your impression of Super Pride? The first story, starring Superboy / Superman and Tim Drake.
Is that Tim Drake? I thought that was Damian.
I'm sorry, you're right. That is Damian. Tim Drake's in a later story.
Yeah.
So many Robins.
Yay for recognition. I'm proud of myself.
Nicely done.
I liked the notion of what symbols mean. And
it opens with this talk about symbols. I like that as well.
And I liked the way that they included actual gay history, even though it was only a couple of lines talking about, like, Stonewall and what pride means and all of that.
Yeah, they will get more in depth with that later.
So I enjoyed all of that, but I don't really care for the cape thing.
You didn't like the rainbow cape?
I mean...
It's fine. You don't gotta like the rainbow cape.
It's not... I understand the point of what they were trying to do with it, but as far as being, like, heavy-handed and pandery, that to me... That
felt a bit much to you?
It did feel a bit much to me. You can have Superman go to Pride.
Yeah.
This isn't necessary.
No, it didn't need the cape.
But hitting it like this, I love that.
You like
having kissed his boyfriend, that's
scene?
great.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Who I did not know, and then once again I had to research, is apparently like a tech geek who is obsessed with Lois Lane, who, like, I don't know if he's like a newscaster, but he has some connection to Lois Lane, and I assume that's how Superboy met him. Like, yeah. It's also interesting a lot of these superheroes have Muggle boyfriends, like non-superhero boyfriends.
Muggle.
Yeah, I went straight Hogwarts.
Hey.
Yeah, he had like really boring, normal folk boyfriends, and
no, you need to stay grounded when you're a superhero.
Yeah. But yeah, they mentioned Stonewall, which happened in 1969. Holla.
I remembered that.
Yes.
I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah, I did not so much. All right, but yeah, I liked it. I liked the art. I thought the art style was really good in it. It's not my favorite art. We'll get there, but it was a very cool art style. And I also like how Damian's just there being extremely paranoid, like the whole time.
Honestly, though, with what happened,
with what's happening lately
in the real world,
Damian is right. Yeah. Sadly, it's not like Scarecrow you have to be worried about, or Killer Croc. It's like a bunch of like
he's talking about like
psychopaths worried about children being groomed.
Yeah.
Well,
Poor Damian was right. Aren't you worried about anybody like attacking?
Yeah.
Apparently we should be.
Yeah.
Apparently we should
Someone should be. All right. Our second story is called Confessions, which I just like because it was a bunch of Amazons wrestling. So that was cool.
This one is the one I knew probably the least about.
Yeah.
Because I didn't recognize any of these characters. I didn't know what, like... They're talking about a weapon.
Yeah, it's the lady with the eye patches, Io, a blacksmith from Wonder Woman's area, Themyscira.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they're describing how she lost her sword. Here's the weird part, though. She's like, I lied to you about how I lost the sword. I actually lost it in a wrestling tournament, and I didn't want to, like, why didn't you want to tell her that she lost the sword in a wrestling tournament?
This one...
Oh, also, real quick, I wanted to show you something, because this is apparently a redo of an actual comic. If you are ever looking at Mr. Miracle number 25 from March 1991, it is basically this story. Like, Big Barda's in the front, and you have a bunch of female wrestlers, all standing in the ring. So apparently this is a kind of a redo of a story that actually happened where Big Barda wrestled. Not sure, mind you, if she was wrestling for, for a women's shelter, but yeah, apparently that happened before. I also like that they had Giganta in here because she is one of my favorite lady villains. Her superpower is like she can grow gigantic, hence the name. And
this art style looks older.
Yeah. Maybe they were trying to copy the art style from the older comics.
That makes sense. If this is supposed to be like this story, so here's this other side of it.
Yeah.
Then it would make sense to try to copy the.
Yeah, because see, when
style.
they cut back, because it is a flashback, but when they cut back from the flashback, it's a very different art style. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know, that the art style didn't particularly land for me, and but yeah, I always like weird, like just weird fights. I mean, one of the things I tune to comics for is the weird fights, and that was a very weird fight. And Big Barda, who I don't know, she's a character. I think she dates Mr. Miracle. She used to work for Granny Goodness and Apocalypse, but now she's joined the Good Peoples. And that's all I know about her. I didn't look that up. I just happened to know a little bit about Big Barda.
Like I said, this one was the one I had the least amount of reference. Well, that one and then the Aqua Boy one. The ones I had the least amount of reference for.
We need to watch Young Justice. I need to catch you up on that. Yeah, this one, Think of Me, I really liked it because it was about being asexual and of people that don't get a lot of representation. Like, asexual seems like the most, and how he talks about in the comic how like love being represented physically is being shown, like that is the only way love is shown in any sort of media, and how you got to assume daunting and isolating that would be for someone who views themselves as asexual. And also, it freaking had the Music Meister cameo. And that is a villain that is just super goofy. And I always like when they put goofy villains in there.
I also really liked, for this story in particular, I liked the way he talked about not fitting. No, that's the other one. Never mind.
No?
Never mind.
Although he did mention that. That's kind of a recurring theme for these
not
stories.
Fitting in is
the not
definitely...
fitting in thing. Yeah. Poor Music Meister. No. But
there are a lot of Robins.
Well, this is Damien again.
Yeah,
though.
it's Damien.
I will say this, and I like that. Apparently, they had an adventure together on Beast Island, some island, Lazarus Island, and afterwards they became really good friends, which is very, very cute. And they both are talking about how they made a friend, and they keep putting in parentheses, but I don't know.
Some of these stories, like, you have to keep reading what they tie into for some of the references to make sense. Yeah,
which I do think that you do want people to travel on and learn more about the characters, but you want them to have enough from that short story that if they only read that short story, they're not lost. And I think as we go further on, there are stories that drop the ball on that.
I do like Damien just being Damien in the first story and in that one.
Yeah, Damien is always Damien, yeah. And that just means he's a well-developed character because anytime you have a character that when they say things, you can be like, that's just what that character would say. Or you can be like, oh, that doesn't sound right. Like, that's a well-developed character. They have a persona that so that you know the quality of the things that they say are consistent with the character that they're trying to portray.
Yeah.
And Damien
is always just Damien.
Yeah, they've done really well with him. Like, he is a character that I understand, and whew. Alright, so this is Up at Bat. This is about Alyssa Yao, and
I really liked that one.
Yeah, she was Barbara Gordon's roommate, but she never knew that she was Batgirl. So it's kind of ironic in this that, like, she rescues Batgirl without ever knowing that it's her roommate, Barbara Gordon. And also they fight Killer Moth, who, again, a lame villain who, once again, gets some representation here. See, it's not just about representation for the LGBT community. There's also
really bad villains.
Really bad villains that never get the love, and Killer Moth is...
This is the one where the girl says Suffering Sappho, isn't it?
Suffering what?
Suffering Sappho. One of these, I wrote this down because I've been listening to a podcast talking a lot about Sappho, and it was really, Sappho is one of the first female poets that we have any record of, and she's actually where you get the term sapphic from, because she's considered to be one of the first, like, lesbians or at least bisexual women ever.
Huh.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is one of those reference thingies I thought was really neat, because they do a decent enough job. And in this one, I like that the ASL sign for trans is beautiful. It's the same sign motion for American Sign Language.
Which I learned from this. This is not knowledge I had before.
It's not knowledge I had before, but it is something I love knowing now.
Yeah. This I think is a very good example of them getting the pacing right.
Yeah.
It starts out, she talks about how she's kind of lost her will to fight, and then Batgirl just shows up wounded, takes her back to the clock tower where Batgirl hangs out, and later Oracle will hang out, and, helps her out, and then beats Killer Moth, and then she leaves with this newfound sense of purpose. It's good, it's short, the story is, nothing felt like it was forced or like, pigeonholed in.
And the character's compelling.
Yeah, like this is a character I would read more about.
Yes.
And Batgirl, I'm always a fan of Batgirl. Like, Batgirl's super cool. Batgirl's super cool. Yeah, I have a comic where she fights the Riddler, and he's like basically talking to her about how like he's always had like his lackeys were always females, and like they were all his lovers, but they were all very dumb. And like he was like, a Batgirl, but you're so smart. Like, oh, you and me, but it could never be because you're such a do-gooder. Like I can't stand it.
Aww.
And it was very sad at the end. It was like, oh, you lonely boy. It was right before Batman was going to marry Catwoman, so like. I guess Riddler was feeling very like.
I need to do that too. I need to.
Well, it's very, very typical of him to be very greedy and like, oh, he gets a happy ending. Like, he doesn't deserve a happy ending. I deserve a happy ending. And then like, he talks himself out of it during their fight.
Well, at least he's smart enough to recognize this would not work out.
It would never
takes
work.
Batman a really long time.
Well, yeah, Batman probably still not. But yeah, that was up as Bat. And this is the World Kept Just For Me, which is my favorite art style of all of these. Like, because a lot of it takes place underwater, and the way they capture like the hair waves and just
the slight blue tint to everything.
The slight blue tint to
without
everything.
making it blue washed. It is very like the colors are still very vibrant.
Yeah, I think it is the color more than anything else that really just really gets to me. I'm really a fan of the coloring of it.
Now this is the one I was thinking about. I identify very very much with characters who feel like they don't belong in either place. And Aquaboy here being gay, half
Aquatarian.
Yeah, half Aquatarian and then half like...
His father was actually Black Manta, who is the #1 villain of Aquaman. And he talks about it here. That's why his mother moved him out to the desert.
Yeah,
to get as far away from water as possible.
But he doesn't feel like he belongs in either world.
Yeah.
And that is something I identify very sharply with in characters.
In what way does that reflect? You know, if
with
you don't
me
mind sharing.
personally?
Yeah, what two worlds do you feel are...
I am Hispanic, but I was raised by my mother who was white. And so I didn't learn the Spanish, and I look like I am straight from Mexico. You could drop me in and I would probably blend in quite well. So it is a thing of like, I'm too Hispanic for most white people, and I'm too white for most Hispanic people. And there is this line that you walk where you're not enough of anything for anyone. Which actually is also, I'm pansexual. So like, I'm not straight, I'm not gay. There's a lot of the same kind of like biphobia that can work in to situations that works in for pansexuals as well.
I know when I first met you, I thought too Hispanic, too pansexual. I thought both of those things. And
well, you knew I was pansexual before I did then.
It's
so
only I mean, I just did. I could feel it.
You know what's funny about that is, in all honesty, even before I came to, like, understand my sexuality like that, no one ever thought I was straight.
The short hair.
Well, it didn't always have short hair.
Yeah.
The haircut's new.
No, I have no idea. Like,
it's just an energy I give off, I guess. But I've also never had a gaydar. That's kind of
funny, too. Yeah, that's kind of funny, too, because the mythical gaydar, like...
I've never had one.
Everyone... But here's the thing, like, a lot of guys think any woman that doesn't want to sleep with them is gay, and so...
neckbeards.
Yeah, it's hard to give any value to that opinion. Like,
well, I'm talking about other gay people, though. Like,
and they were just like, you're...
Yeah, it was always a surprise that... Because when I was younger, I did kind of think I was straight, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
But even other people who weren't straight, I don't, I guess, give off the vibes. I don't know if maybe I'm just not judgmental enough. I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure where that breaks down at. But
yeah, that's weird. But wild.
But I do. This story though, I did like the notion of this kid doesn't fit in anywhere, but he gets, I guess, to kind of make his own place.
Yeah, and it's also, whenever you get in a new relationship, once it becomes quote-unquote serious, there is kind of like, okay, I'm going to show you all the things where I came from, but you and me are going to actually form a new place that is none of the places I've been at before now. Like, we are going to create something new, but before we can, you have to see all of my past and know where I came from. And especially in a case like this isn't like one of them is from, like Mexico and one of them's from New Mexico. It's like one of them is Atlantean,
yeah,
and one of them is from Earth, but then I don't know how he got his underwater powers. I know how, because again, Black Manta's his dad. Black Manta's just a dude, a dude with a cool helmet, but just a dude. Like, so I'm not sure at what point he started learning like water manipulation magic, because Atlanteans have a lot of magical abilities, and I don't know. Like, he's Aqua. This is another case where he has taken over. He is now Aquaman. Aquaman has retired and is now just king of Atlantis and raising kids and I guess golfing. And so
you think it would be lobbying for better ocean protection?
The former that's who you take out to the golf.
Yeah,
you take the politicians out for golfing, and then you slip them bills to not drill in your ocean. But yeah, so Aqualad is now Aquaman, which also happened in the Young Justice comic. But I know more about him because of the Young Justice comic. Like, that's where I learned. Like, this Superboy, there is a Superboy in the Young Justice, but it's a different one. Mm-hmm. He was created in a lab by Lex Luthor, so they'd have something to fight Superman if he ever went rogue.
Okay.
And this one was actually Martha and Kent's boy, maybe? I looked it up, but I think they're different Superboys. Or they did a revamping recently, like DC after the New 52, they reset everything, so it could just be some reset stuff. But yeah, this was another one that I liked. Like, I thought they knocked this one out of the park. Next up, we have Gumshoe in Green, which is a story of one of the Green Lanterns, of which there are just a billion of them. There's one for like every sector of space, and there's a bazillion sectors of space, and I cannot keep them all. I can't keep them all distracted.
This one is probably the one I like the least.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I will tell you one thing that I thought was really weird is through the whole thing, he's flirting with the two of them, and then at the end, he gets mad when the two of them are like, "So, you wanna have a three-way? We might eat you after."
I think this is supposed to be unicorn hunting.
Okay,
I think this is supposed to be a...
And can you describe unicorn hunting for our...
So, unicorn hunting is the notion of finding a bisexual who wants to have a three-way. Like, it's the notion of, well, bisexuals are loose. All you have to do is find someone who's willing to sleep with either gender or, I guess, alien too. I don't know.
Gender. I think it's a dude, a guy and a lady. I think they are presenting as male and female at the very least.
Yeah. So, I think that this is supposed to be unicorn hunting, and it's supposed to be the notion of, like, bisexual people are just willing to have sex with anybody because standards only exist if you're straight or something.
Yeah. Which is which is what he basically says here on this page.
Yeah.
But it just seemed weird because, again, it did seem like he was flirting with both of them, and I'm like, it's okay to blow them away because they were going to eat you, but the misunderstanding probably could have came from a pretty based place. Like, it's like, oh, you seem to have been attracted to me, you seem to be attracted to this person, we're attracted to each other, we could make this into a triangle if you wanted to. But, then they tried to eat him, so that kind of messed all that up. I also wasn't a super fan of this one. I did like the style of making it black and white except the green, because he's a Green Lantern.
Well, I like the detective, like the whole old-time
the noir detective thing
feel they got going.
Yeah.
But I didn't care for the story that much, and...
Yeah, and like this character didn't do... And here's a place, for instance, where I think they really dropped the ball. At the very end, he's walking by a diner, and he sees Sizzin
The names were also really irritating, in my opinion.
Yeah, the names were a little too much. And he goes in and talks to him, and the last pictures of them, like, hugging, and I'm like, that would be a big deal if I had any idea who this is. But I don't, and you laid no groundwork.
Yeah, nothing.
And just showing me a pink girl in a diner is not enough to make me like, well, I gotta find out more about her. She's at a diner. Like,
I got the notion that she was an ex.
Well, an ex or a current, like...
I'm not sure. Or maybe she just left planet. Was that not... I think that was in, like, on the first page.
Maybe. It's very possible.
But he didn't really dwell on it, and there wasn't really any establishment, especially after what was happening.
Yeah.
And like I said, this one was... It fell the most flat.
Yeah. These are characters I don't know, and I don't feel that this was a good introduction to said characters. And again, when you're doing something like this, that's going to get not just comic readers, but the chances of pulling in people from everywhere is really high with this. So you don't want to leave people that don't know anything about your product just out in the cold. And I think this story, above all the others, did. The next one is public displays of electromagnetism, which I thought was kind of funny. First of all, I will say this. This is the Shadow Thief. Shadow Thief, last I heard, was a dude. And I don't know what happened here. I don't know if the dude became a lady or what. If there's a new Shadow Thief in town, I don't know. I would like to, just right here, you have a little spot on the page where you could put a little blurb. It says, to find out why Shadow Thief is no longer looks like the Shadow Thief, read this comic.
Yeah. But they certainly do that enough. You would think that they could just... I didn't know anything about this section. So.
Yeah, these are like the heroes from the future. There's a lot of... there's like the legion of superheroes from the future. And they've thrown a lot of... the Legion of Superheroes sometimes has 20, 30 members. It's insane.
Wow.
There's always a ton of them. And so this is like just 5 or 6 of them having their little good times. So what did you think about the discussion that this one had about PDAs? Because the whole conflict here isn't really with the Shadow Thief. That's a one-page explosion, but... It's about the Ray and his computer hacker, again, a muggle boyfriend, his tech boyfriend, whether they want to kiss in front of people or not. And I don't know, I kind of thought it would have been a nice place for people who don't like PDAs to get a moment, but no, at the end they kiss in front of everyone, and apparently that was the right choice Because the only reason you wouldn't do a PDA is because you're ashamed of your sexuality. It's like, sometimes you just don't do PDAs. Like,
some people aren't
I
very...
hate PDAs. Like, I hate them so much. I felt personally attacked by this comic. And here's the thing. I don't even get judged by society when I engage in a PDA. I just don't like them. Like, I don't like private PDAs that much, but I really hate, like, public ones.
I don't know. How many people are standing around?
At least 2, because these 2 are...
they're doing it in front of...
Yeah, well, they're doing a movie night, and they're standing in front of the movie night screen. So, there's a good 4 or 5 people, I think, there.
Yeah.
And it just felt a little...
Well, I don't know. I think part of it is just the way... It's one thing if he said, I don't like PDA, but it clearly does state that not in front of the team.
Yeah, not in front of the team.
His
They'll
issues,
get jealous, because I'm very good looking, and if you're the only one kissing me, they're all going to be jealous.
Well, his issues are just the notion of being gay in front of people. If it had been more of a...
Well, actually, let's see, because he does explain himself. He does, because they're like, dude, we're all cool with that relationship. What happened there? And let's see if I can get to where he says, I was never shown affection growing up, and I'm not sure how to do it right. So it's awkward for him. But in this, it's okay because he obviously wants to.
Yeah.
He wants to overcome that hurdle. But yeah, sometimes you just fucking don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an issue of what kind of boundaries you want to have if your problem is PDA.
Yeah.
But I do think his
And also
problem...
the way they handled it. Like, he was like, I shouldn't have just busted out.
Yeah, yeah.
Although, to be fair, Shadow Thief was killing his teammates. So even that's a weird, like, I know I should have stayed, we should have talked about it. It's like, no.
Well, maybe...
Superheroing calls.
Yeah.
Like, neither of them handled it well, and they both apologized to each other, which I liked.
Yes, yes.
Because otherwise...
They have a healthy relationship.
Yeah, they seem to have the healthiest of most of these. I would consider this one of the tops, because, like, they had a problem. They talked like adults, and they got through it, and then they kissed in front of everybody, which still gives me the heebie-jeebies, but that's okay.
I really liked this one.
Bats in the Cradle with Batwoman. Yes, this one was neat, and I figured you'd like this one, being a mother yourself.
Yes.
It's very much about
supporting your children.
A proud papa supporting his daughter no matter what choices she makes. Like when she got kicked out of the military for homosexual conduct.
Which is also a good historical reference.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she's gay. Like
Yes.
that's her orientation. For anyone that doesn't know, and her father, like that was never an issue between them. And like, I like that it starts out with him kidnapped, and she comes in and saves him, and just the whole time he's just beaming with pride.
Yes.
Even while he has a hood over his head, he's like, God,
he's just sincerely like a good father.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it's
he
like
sincerely is proud of and loves his daughter, and I loved that story.
Yeah,
that one made me very happy.
And the thing is, he at one point, and I'm not sure if this is even in the continuity anymore, because like I said, they did a great reset. But before that, he was in an army that was trying to like get Batman out of Gotham City, so he was a bad guy for a while.
Yeah,
or at the very least, he was attacking a vigilante.
Hero.
Yeah. So, it was very neat to it was very neat to see him in a very sympathetic light, and to see that like, yeah, you can be a bad guy and still be a good dad. Like that was cool.
Yeah.
Again, I like to see my villains. I always like my villains to have some sense of sympathy, or where they're not just. It's very boring to have a. I'm a brief tangent. Have you been watching Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I have never gotten into.
Oh
Star
yeah,
Wars.
you didn't do Star Wars. You're the wrong person to talk about.
Sorry, you can have your tangent anyway, but just I will be.
All I'm going to say is that the villains in that, and in a lot of Star Wars, this is a shortcoming of Star Wars in general for me, is that the villains just are so evil. It's cartoonish.
Right.
It's really cartoonish, and like it reminds me of that dude at the end of the first Last of Us game. It's like, just give me a reason. He's just a total dick for no reason, and it's like, come on, like, I know that there are people that bad.
Yeah.
But I would like to think there's not a universe worth of them. And that, I don't know, like, the worst people I know are not that cartoonishly bad. Like, there have probably been, in all of history, there's probably been like 30 people that cartoonishly bad. Like, Hitler, probably 2 or 3 slave owners, probably, I assume a couple people that instigated some American coups in South American countries, but it's like a short list, like, that are so cartoonishly evil that they don't even love their daughter. Like, they're just...
Yeah.
And maybe that is me being incredibly naive, and I will accept that, but it all ends up being, and this is the undisputable fact, that I like my villains somewhat sympathetic. To have some bit of logic to the things they do besides, I'm doing this because it's evil, and I'm an evil guy who does evil things, because that is lazy writing.
That is lazy writing.
There was also an ad in here for mermaids. Are you familiar with that? Because it's just a UK charity providing vital support and resources for trans, non-binary, and gender-diverse children and young people and their families. I like it. It's just a little comic strip where a mom is seeing her child suffer, and then calls Mermaid, and she's like, "Hey, what's going on? Like, my kid's really sad."
So you have resources.
Yeah,
for this.
and it's like, "Yeah, I can answer your questions." She's like, "Okay, explain the sexes to me, all of them." And he does, and then she hangs up, and she comes in, and is like, "Hey, I saw this flag in your room. I talked to a dude that told me what it meant. Let me support you in this." So, good parent again.
Yeah.
And I also like that
it's
the ads in this comic are not for the DC website or, whatever stuff that's in normal comic book ads, video games and stuff. Like, it's nice that the ads are supportive as well.
Yeah, I did write down that I liked that the ads are, and then there was also an ad for the Human Rights Campaign.
Yes. Yeah.
And I do like that the ads are for
and
LGBTQ plus causes, as opposed to being like Skittles and Oreos and like
the Pride Skittles.
Yeah, we're talking about pandering. Like, I do appreciate
Pride Skittles.
I do appreciate the fact that the ads are for causes that help LGBTQ plus peoples, and they're actually for things, for resources and for support.
Yeah.
So that is, I do appreciate that.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, and like
I actually was looking
also the Read with Love ad on the back as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I was looking at that because I didn't understand what it was at first until I got down to the end, and I'm like, this is a really weird story. There are no words.
It's only one page. It seems a little short. And then special delivery. Now this is Tim Drake, correct?
Yes, and this is probably my favorite one.
Okay, this one is very cute. I've never seen Micro and Macro, but I kind of like them as villains. Like one that can shrink really small, and one's like a big puncher. And they're a guy and a girl. I don't know if they're a couple or brother and sister. Like, I don't know their backstory, but I'd be interested. Like, this got me wanting to read more. Like, I like this whole thing was good. Like, his boyfriend came off as charming. Mm-hmm. Like, he described just nauseatingly what it's like to be in love.
Yes.
And I like the way that even during the fight scenes, him describing being in love, it still fits. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of like getting your ass kicked by supervillains. Yeah, like
this one
even painful at times. It's a picture of him getting punched. He's talking about how love could be painful.
I like the art in this one.
Yeah, this one also had very good art. This is kind of my favorite just for superhero art. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I like the dimensions of the characters. They're not ridiculously overdrawn. Like Macro's got a little pudge. Like he's skinny as hell. Like these are bodies I could obtain.
And I like the way they portray Tim being kind of unsure and like trying to find footing. Mm-hmm. And it's really cute.
Well, you gotta think, raised by Batman.
Also true.
I mean, he had a dad. His dad got killed. But yeah. And it's very cute. It's Happy Fur Pry. So the story, very very quickly, is Tim Drake's trying to deliver a cake, and of course he gets stopped by superheroes or supervillains who see him protecting the cake, and it's just in a box, and they think it's like a secret weapon or Batman's identity.
There's a lot of
in
leaps
there.
of assumptions.
Yeah, they're just guessing. It's very funny, all the different guesses that Macro and Micro make, and he's fighting them. So when he finally gets the cake there, it's been smushed on one side, so it says Happy Fur Pry. And he's like, "Aw, how did you know it was our first Happy Fur Pry?" It was very cute.
It's just such a sweet, like, this is a genuinely sweet story.
This one was another one that...
And also, I think this one is where I wrote down, capes are a bad idea. Like, he gets
Yep.
jerked right by the cape.
Yeah. If The Incredibles taught us nothing.
Well, there's the, Into the Spider-Verse movie, right? There's the,
Yep, there's the cape pull.
Yep. The Peter V. Parker is talking to Miles Morales, and Miles is saying something about a cape, and he's like, capes are bad. We don't do capes. And I was just, that's the first thing I thought when he got jerked by the neck is, see, this is why you don't do capes, man. Capes are bad.
Don't do capes, guys. Alright, the next is the one that, at least this issue of Pride that I have, I don't know if DC Pride had multiple covers, but the issue that I have, the cover is Poison Ivy and Harley. They're probably, out of all the characters in here, they're probably the most popular right now. So it makes sense they would be on the cover. And their story is the next one called The Hunt. Which I really wish, first of all, the first time I read it, I got a little confused.
Yeah.
Because it's told, like, things are happening simultaneously on the top half and the bottom half. And then on the left side and the right side. Like, every page is kind of twisting your viewpoint. The short story is that Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn are fighting doppelgangers. Poison Ivy's fighting a doppelganger of Harley Quinn, or a mimic, whatever. And Harley Quinn is fighting this thing that looks like Poison Ivy. And they're both saying, like, mean, nasty things to each other. Excuse me. Which is how they know that it's not the real person. And also, I think Harley said Poison Ivy's butt didn't feel right. Which I thought was very cute.
It was very cute.
And then they eventually, of course, beat the doppelgangers, and it just kabooms away, and they're like, oh, I love you too. I like this view of their relationship. The story is hot garbage. Like, you just have a mimic just show up out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
It's there for 3 pages. When they say they love each other, it just explodes. You never actually see the mimic, and it's gone, and that's it. It's the end of the story. That was crazy to me. Like, I was like, you have villains that could have filled this role.
Yeah.
Like, it easily could have been Jervis Tetch with some fucking Mad Hatter tech, or fucking, like, it could have been Cornelius Sturch, who can fuck with your mind and make you see things that aren't there. Dr. Destiny. Like, there's ways this could have been done. And instead, it was just a mimic. When we said we loved each other, it couldn't handle that.
It seemed like it was some kind of, like, manifestation of bad thoughts or something. Yeah. And they are, like...
Yeah, they're doing like
the woods or something.
Yeah, before it's at the beginning, they're chasing they're having a fight in the woods, but not like a real fight, like a foreplay to sex fight. Is what normal, very healthy people do.
Look, they're
don't
still
judge
villains. Me. Oh, we're talking about your personal preferences.
Maybe
now.
I am.
I get it.
Not here to be
There's
judged.
There's a lot of exercise involved with your foreplay.
I mean, yeah. You would hope.
One of the things I did like, though, is one of the ways you can tell that they're not really talking to who they think they're talking to is this Harley is...
Yeah, they talk about costume changes.
Yeah, this is the animated Batman's Harley. Like, this is an old Harley.
The old Harley Quinn costume versus how she dresses now. And the Poison Ivy also looked like from her first appearances. So they're fighting the first appearance versions of themselves. And at first they're like, ooh, you did a costume change. Sexy. And then they realize they're fighting evil doppelgangers.
But yeah, I feel like this is supposed to be sort of them fighting their demons, almost.
Well, whatever this mimic is, it's definitely trying to get their deep, dark secrets. Like, the Poison Ivy is saying, you're worthless, Joker was right about you. And, let's see, what did Harley Quinn say? Oh, I don't want a life with you, to Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it backfires because they immediately know, because they're so supportive of each other, that they immediately knew that this was not.
Yeah, something was wrong.
This was not legit. And,
which I think shows how, like, grounded their relationship is. I agree that the villain seems kind of out of place.
Yeah,
but it is a nice, positive representation for how.
Yeah, the villain was just a vehicle for their for their relationship, so to see how their relationship worked, and that's fine, I guess. But like, to have it just disappear, that thing, that mimic, it was feeding on us. Harles, is it true what you said that you I love you? Apparently, that was the first time they said that to each other, I guess, because they really freaked out about it. So yeah, the only thing you get about this thing that fucking almost had them kill each other was that thing, that mimic, it was feeding on us. That's it. It's one speech bubble. It's not enough. Again, for the villain, what was it? Why was it feeding on us?
They're the villain. Like, they're villains. You got enough villains.
Nowadays, they're probably anti-heroes. Probably. They're slowly moving into hero territory, although Poison Ivy backslides a lot lately. But that's neither here nor there. And then this is are you ready for this? This is one of the Flash kids. There are so many Flash kids.
Is this an alternate universe?
No.
Okay.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Well, it's just...
Oh, yeah, this is weird. I forgot. It's Teen Justice.
I didn't know what was going on with some of
I
this.
do not know. You're right. I forgot that halfway through. This is the other one where I was very upset with how they introduced an entire team of people with no explanation. Like, I don't know who any of these characters are. The bad guys, I will give them this, the bad guys all got intros. Then Teen Justice shows up. I don't know who any of them are.
Robin looks like a girl.
With buns on top?
This
Super person is got short hair and a skirt. This looks like the dude that Aquaman was making out with a few comics ago. Then there's a lightning girl. So anyway, please, if anyone knows who these people are, feel free to tell us. But I didn't even know. I wanted to look these up too, but I didn't know how. There's Robin, but girl, and with bun. Like, I don't know how I would have did that Google search.
And then there's Raven here.
Yeah.
Who looks like a dude.
Who is a dude, and is like, I can never join up.
Yeah, this is just... They're on a
But it says
quote.
in Multiversity Teen Justice. So tales from the multiverse are usually alternate realities.
Yeah.
So that's probably is what's going on here.
It just didn't make any sense to me. Some of the characters, like, I recognize, like, Robin and stuff.
Yeah, but they're weird versions of them because it's a multiverse. It's some other version of the universe, which is fine. All right, now we're getting to the one I'm most interested.
Yes.
Now, this, story-wise, was my favorite.
Yes.
This one blew my mind. Just for the record, it's about Tim Conway, right? Who was the Kevin Conway. Sorry, Tim Conway's a different guy. Kevin Conway, who was the voice of Batman in the animated series. He's the voice of Batman in all the Arkham games. Most of the animated DC specials that came out, and it's all about before he came out. Because he's an older gentleman, so he talks about the AIDS scare of the 80s. He talks about, like, growing up in the 60s and 70s. Talks about having a schizophrenic brother, an abusive dad, and a mom that left him in a divorce. And then his dad, like, gets stabbed.
Yeah.
And his mom... No, he stabs himself. He tries to kill himself and succeeds, I believe. But he's in the hospital, and the mom's, like, can't even go. And so she sends the son... oh my god, like this. And maybe it's because my parents are so messed up. This one is the one that hit me the hardest.
This is the most emotionally impactful story, and honestly, I think this is the most important thing they put in this one.
Agreed. This one, and they saved it for last with good reason. Yeah. This was amazing. And just so you know, like, Kevin Conroy went on Twitter and talked about like what a positive response he got for this,
Yes.
and it warmed my heart. Every once in a while, the internet is not the devil. And,
Every once in a while.
That kind of makes my heart sing.
The thing that I like the most about this is I think that these stories are incredibly important.
Yes.
I think, especially because it reflects so much on the past and how societal reaction to homosexuality was so negative.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that we can forget because, especially as like a millennial, like this, most of my interactions with LGBTQ plus things are positive reenactments. Yeah, absolutely. And they keep reinforcing that, like, obviously people should be allowed to live their fucking lives.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Well, it's hard. Like, you find yourself in the bubble and you're like, yeah, things are so much better now. And of course, in many ways they are. Yeah. But you, and I say you, and I'm talking in a mirror now because not you. You, as in me, take for granted, like, how far we still have to go. Because it's not something that touches you every day. Like, I don't hear in the news every day how I'm trying to groom children and how I shouldn't be allowed to teach. And, like, I have teaching, like, I'm an ex-teacher. I have teaching certification. I can't imagine if I went to school one day and everyone else there was mumbling under their breath that I was a pedophile. Yeah. Like, and then I'd go home and see it on the news. Yeah. And then I would hear it from people like, I can't imagine, like, I can't. The thing that story came the closest to putting me there.
Yeah. Well, the thing that this story does well is it talks about all of the struggles that it takes to, one, accept yourself. Yeah. And to try to make a life for yourself in a world that is actively hostile to you. Right. Picking your battles and how unfair it is that you even have to. Which you shouldn't. Like, yeah, you should be able. Like, there are enough things that are messed up in the world without adding, oh, you're gay. Well, let me make your life that much more difficult. Yeah. Like, he seemed to have had enough of a rough time without anyone helping. Yeah, like, this guy was batting from behind the pick, like, from the very start. And I do think, and I had no idea. Yeah. Like, when I used to watch Batman the Animated Series, like, because, again, I was born in 1979, so, like, I am an old man. And, if you had told me when I watched the first episode of Batman the Animated Series that the guy who was doing the voice of Batman was gay, I wouldn't have believed it, because I was dumb back then. I was stupid, and all the stereotypes, everything I knew about gay people was from this movie that came out in the 80s called Mannequin, where a guy falls in love with a mannequin who, when no one else is around, it comes to life. In that movie, there is a fashion designer who is a flamboyant gay man. Yeah. That is the only gay man I knew about. Like, I assumed Boy George was straight. I assumed that everyone was straight except the dude in the Mannequin movie. And of course, by the time Batman the Animated Series came out, I was a little wiser, but not so wise that I believed that a gay man could do a tough guy voice. Like, that was still well beyond anything I could accept. Because, again, how I was raised, I knew nothing. Yeah. So yeah, this was the first I knew of any of this, and it blew my mind. I was like, no wonder he did such a good Batman. That dude was tortured. I did like the way he tied that in into, like, getting in the right zone for Batman. I thought that was really interesting. Well, it's turning your struggles into a net positive. But I do think that those stories from gay and queer people, especially from history, are things that we should work more to acquaint ourselves with, because none of the rights that anyone has now would be had without those stories. Yeah. Every single person, and him included, those stories build the foundation for what we have now. And if we want to keep building, which I think we should, then we need to know what came before. And I really, that story is my... Yeah, that one blew me away. That one is the one that I think is the most important. Yeah, and it's got a content warning in front, because they drop a few F-bombs, and not fuck. They drop a few F-bombs in there, and I realized what a
insulated life I've lived that I have not heard that uttered or written in a long time. And yeah, like every time I saw it, like it felt dirty, like just reading it. Like the last time I dealt with that word was like in a Bo Burnham special, like 5 years ago. Like, and and I was blown away. Like that was a powerful story. And to jump into my overall review, the book is worth buying for that story alone, for those 8 pages by itself. And overall, it's a purchase I would recommend. Like, it does a lot, and especially if you have someone who's into comics and is also LGBT in your life, then yeah, it's a no-brainer. And like, I would definitely recommend getting it. And it can lead you, except for the stupid stories, it can, the ones that don't do a good job, but the ones that do a good job, it can lead them into other characters or those characters in other adventures. Because if you liked 6 pages on Harley and Ivy, there's entire huge comics all about them.
Yeah. And
so on for any of the 6 Robins that are in there, or the Ray, or any of those characters.
Just real quick, I did want to mention, because I did look up who wrote a lot of these stories.
Oh, yes, you did mention. Yeah, I want to hear that.
So, Super Pride, the writer was Devin Grayson. Devin Grayson is actually a bisexual hippie. When I looked up their, I guess it was like their Wikipedia page.
When I looked at their Tinder profiles.
Yes. No, it was, they actually have a really, like, I think they were raised on a commune or something. Like, they had a very interesting backstory.
Wow.
Nubia writer was Stephanie Williams. I couldn't find anything on whether she was straight or part of the community or not.
Fair enough.
Connor Hawkes, which is the Green Arrow one.
Okay, yep.
That was written by Rose Stein and Ted Brandt. Mm-hmm. They're a team cartoonist and a couple. So
nice. Good on them.
Up at Bat was written by Jadzia Axelrod, who is trans. So
and has an amazing name.
It is
Jadzia Axelrod. You either are like the lead singer of a heavy metal band,
or a comic book writer,
or you're a comic book writer. It's like naming your kid Jarvis. There's going to be a butler. Like,
I think they probably named themselves.
Oh yeah, that's true too. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We didn't even we didn't even talk about dead names.
Well, I'm actually really glad that, although there is a trans character in this, that they don't mention dead names. I read Cemetery Boys, which is the main character in that is a trans dude, and they never once mentioned his dead name.
Nice.
And I think honestly that is super respectful, because I know that for a lot of trans people, not being called by the thing you identify as is very damaging.
Yeah.
So even though, like, I didn't look for anyone's dead name, but I did think it was neat that the trans...
Well, no, when you say they picked a new name, I was like, yeah, well, duh, of course. Like, it's one of those things, it's like, sky's blue. It's like, oh, yeah, duh, sky's blue. Like, yeah, I just realized how dumb that was. Like, well, what a great day. It was like, well, yeah,
honestly, if you can name yourself, what would you...
Yeah. I think I'd stick with Reno Dino Valentino. Just rolls off the tongue.
You know what? It does, though.
Yeah.
Let's see. A World Kept Just For Me was written by Alicia Wong. Mm-hmm. Didn't find anything on that. A Gumshoe in Green was written by Teenie Howard. Public Displays of Electromagnetism was written by Greg Lockard, which I didn't find anything about their sexuality, but he did get a GLAAD award. So
that's good. That's a point in his favor in my book.
Mm-hmm. Bats in the Cradle was written by Stephanie Phillips. Harley and Ivy in the Hunt was written by Danny Fernandez, whose Twitter profile says she is bi as fuck, and I actually know her from some podcasts too. She's really cool.
Cool.
Are You Ready for This is written by Danny Lore and Ivan Cohen, and couldn't find anything on them. And then Find Batman was written by Kevin Conroy, who is a gay man in the 70s. So.
Who probably had the hardest road of all of them. But yeah. So overall impressions, you would give this one buy. Buy, not B-I, but B-U-Y. you would encourage people to buy.
Yes,
this.
I think these stories are important. I know we were talking about pandering and stuff before, and there is something to be said.
Time for the segment.
Okay.
The big question.
Okay.
So every episode, unless I forget, because it's the first episode, and we may hate this and not do it again. The person who presents the comic, and this was my presentation, it's the big question. And that is, it can be anything you want, but it's the big question you ask at the end of the podcast. And this one that I want to ask, and sorry to interrupt you, but I think you're going that way, is it possible for corporations to honor Pride Month without pandering? Is that possible? And is that where you're going? If it's not,
well,
start with what you were saying.
it is kind of where I was going, because you did do me the service of telling me the question ahead of time this time. And
not sure if we're going to do that every time either.
Sometimes it's
a work in
fun
progress.
to have to think on the fly.
Yep.
I think it depends. On one hand, I think the representation matters regardless, because like you just said, you didn't have any reference for gay people except for one dude in a movie in the 80s.
Yes.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but that's not good.
What?
So, I do think that ultimately, whether or not it's pandering, and some of these stories I do feel like were, ultimately I do think that it's important to do either way.
Yeah.
So that someone does have reference for a trans character or an asexual character. Or even just so someone, like the story about Kevin Conway. Just so that there is some kind of reference for that period. Like there is... Do I think that a lot of corporations do this because they think they can sell rainbow shit? Absolutely, 100%. Like, that is Skittles.
The only rainbow that matters. So for this month, for Pride Month, the Skittles are gray because the only rainbow that matters is gay rainbows.
There is definitely...
That one is so pandering, it hurts my face to look at it.
Again, they literally had Taste the Rainbow as their original tagline.
They were already there.
They could have gone in so many... Skittles, call us. You need help.
Yes.
But...
It went the wrong way.
But ultimately, whether or not it's pandering, until we have a society that actually values the voice of LGBTQ plus people, which seems like a much more far off idea than it should be, until we actually have a society that values those people and those stories, I think you have to kind of almost like carve out little niches where you can for now. I do make a point to read gay stories. Like, I've made a point to try to find books where the characters are gay, or it just so happens that there are gay romances in them. But I think something like DC Pride or Marvel Pride or anything, these things are more visible.
Accurate, yeah.
To people.
Yeah.
And I think they're important. They might be pandery, and I mean, hell, it works on me. I plan on buying the Marvel Pride when it comes out with Loki on the cover.
Oh, he's a sexy beast, yo.
Hey, that's my favorite. That's my boy.
I know.
Or my not boy. He's gender fluid. I don't actually know what you...
Is it when you're a god? I think you just have to be. Because
Thor's not gender fluid.
You're an alpha and an omega. Well, there's a Lady Thor.
But that's not the same Thor as...
Well, then the job title is fluid.
But Loki...
I don't know. It seems like a weird line, because in the Loki show, there was a Loki who definitely...
Maybe Disney just doesn't understand what gender fluid means.
Maybe it means that when a Loki from another universe shows up, they're of a different gender. You're gender fluid because in the multiverse, oh my god, we're all gender fluid. Because there was a universe where I was born everything, because that's how the infinite multiverse works.
So, off topic just a little bit, right?
Yeah, please.
I saw a TikTok I know how you feel about TikTok, but I saw a TikTok where this dude was saying that all eggs, when they're first fertilized, are female.
Yeah.
And then they become male, if that's what the chromosomes do.
Yeah.
So either life doesn't begin at conception, or all boys are transgender.
Oh, man. I don't think the conservatives are ready for that.
I just thought that was like, I loved that. I'm not gonna lie, but no, Loki is gender fluid, and it's not just the job title, because I don't know that there's ever been another Loki outside of like multiverse
there's
situations.
There's a Gator one. Oh, you mean outside the sorry?
No, there is a Gator one, and he's adorable.
Outside the multiverse.
Outside.
Yeah.
So what happens is Loki can be.
He's a shape
male
changer.
or a female or a fucking horse. Loki does a lot of shit, especially if you
Zeus, also a shape changer.
We're not comparing Loki and Zeus. Zeus is a monster. I don't like Zeus.
Well, I just thought of this, but the Norse gods, with the exception of Loki, are a little more gender rigid than the Greek or the Romans.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Because Zeus would turn into swans and cows, and he would jump trial with just about anything that got close enough to him.
Zeus typically attacked women.
He did do a lot of women attacking. But
he did have, I think, a gay lover.
Yeah, he did. Well, dude, I mean, the Greeks.
But
the rule was when you went off to war, you took a boy with you.
Yeah.
Because so you didn't miss your wife too much.
But they did have very rigid sexual
identities
roles
for the gods. Okay.
Well, not even just the gods though, but they had very rigid roles. So like
in their society.
Yes.
Okay.
So to be someone on the receiving end of a male on male relationship was to be considered feminine. It was degrading. Like it wasn't. But to be the giver was fine. So, yeah, Zeus may have had a male lover, but I promise you Zeus was not receiving.
He was always a top.
He was always a top.
Okay, gotcha.
So
that's fair. That's an important distinction.
I know that Greeks get... Their societies were hella gay, but they weren't healthy.
Yes.
And I don't know about Norse, because I haven't heard as much, and I haven't done as much research.
I'm curious how much of Loki's sexual ambiguity is from mythology as opposed to more recent alliterations of him.
I don't know.
In books and stories and
I
stuff.
read Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology, and I think most of that draws straight from the actual...
I really want to read that. I have not yet. Yeah.
It draws straight from the original Norse mythologies. And I mean, there's some things that Loki definitely did, like the horse thing, and then there was definitely him dressing or presenting female in situations for whatever tricks him and Thor were pulling.
Yeah. Oh.
So, I mean, I don't know about comic books, but I know that Loki, and he gave birth, like, as a horse. So, like, he definitely isn't cisgender. I don't know how exactly.
I'm not
but
sure.
Thor didn't really. Thor, and even in the mythology, Thor's not. He's dressed up as Freya that one time, but like, I don't really know that he acted the part too well.
It's just a one-off. It was just a one-off. It meant nothing. All right. Well.
Slide tangent into ancient mythologies.
Quite fine. I'm always up to get educated on mythology. It's one of my favorite subjects of which I don't know
stories.
Enough. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess the answer to the big question is it doesn't matter.
I mean, I think
it doesn't matter if they're pandering, but if they're doing good, like let's say, and I don't know, and I should have checked this, and I'm kind of sorry I didn't. The profits from the sale of this comic, if 100% of these profits were going to some pro-LGBT community that was doing good works, blah, 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 blah. Even then, it could be argued that, well, it's a publicity stunt. Yeah. They made no profit off this, but look at all the good press
and
they get
if you
for
get
next
into these
month.
Characters,
and then you'll keep
buying
addicted.
Harley and Ivy,
right.
And they've made bank.
But whether that's true or not, you can never know without, I guess, like, knowing the heart of the DC executive that decided on this. And that's something you'll never know. Like,
Yeah.
as in sort of an anti-capitalist, I'm going to usually assume the worst, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
possible this was put out with the best intentions.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it's doing good work out in the world. And
Yes.
that's unlike gray Skittles. So...
There are levels of pandering, I think, is the thing.
Mhm.
Gray Skittles do nothing.
Yeah.
Except for make the Skittles
Ugly.
ugly. I was going to say make them more money, but I'd rather buy rainbow Skittles. If I was going to buy Skittles, I'd rather have rainbow Skittles.
Yes.
So, yeah, like, all it does is make the Skittles ugly and help whatever corporation owns Skittles. Whereas, even if DC is 100% of the profits, there's still ads for LGBTQ plus charities
Some
and
of the
organizations.
writers and pencilers and artists
I didn't even get into who did the
LGBT,
drawing and stuff, but like,
I bet you would have found a similar thing where
Yeah.
a lot of them were in the community or related to it in some way.
So there's a lot.
Although nowadays, who's not?
So
Which is a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, even if this is all just for the money, it still did give LGBTQ plus stories. It still did have LGBTQ plus authors and writers and drawers and stuff. Like, it is overall better. It is an overall good.
Yeah.
But there are levels of pandering. I don't think the fucking Skittles do anything.
Yeah, absolutely not. So, closing. Skittles, no. DC Pride, yay. Buy one, not the other. So, I have another thing, little segment to wrap up the show that I call Reading Ambush.
Oh, goodness.
In which I am going to read you something that blew my mind. It's only 2 paragraphs. It's very short.
Okay.
And so, I got this book called A Guide to Japanese Role-Playing Games from Bitmap Books. Bitmap makes really good books about very nerdy things, mostly video game culture, but they also have a book on, like, micro machine cars and other such things. But this book about RPGs has a section where they just go through a bunch of the old games. A lot of these were, since it's a guide to Japanese RPGs, a lot of these were released in Japan only. And there's this one called Exile. And I read the first 2 paragraphs and I was like, this is amazing. So, it's gonna be kind of all over the place, but you'll get why I read it to you at the end of the, near the end. XZR is a series as subversive as it is obscure. XZR is the other name for Exile. First brought to life on Japanese computers in 1988, each game stars the anti-hero Sadler, a Syrian Hashishin, an assassin disciple of Hassan Asaba, as he fights in an oppression and bring about revolution in 12th century Syria. Sure, I butchered many of those words. Assassin's Creed touches on similar territory, but it sure never cast you as a Shia Muslim eventually sent to the future to kill both Mikhail Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan. That's all I wanted to say about that. It's in closing, that sounds like the greatest game in the world.
I love that.
You get sent, now this, in Japan they made a game where you get sent to the future to kill Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev. I guess you're ending the Cold War and no more tear down this wall, we just kill both of them.
I'm not saying that it wouldn't be the right course to take.
And on that note, thank you so much for tuning in. Do you have the comic for next week? What's the thing that you think we're going to try and read?
If I get to pick, we will probably try to read Lore Olympus off of Webtoons.
Okay.
And
you will be picking. It's just a matter of whether we can get a hold of that or
Lore
not.
Olympus.
Okay. Well, we will put in the show notes what it is. If it's not Lore Olympus, we'll put it in the show notes. So
the only problem with Lore Olympus is it's not finished yet.
Oh, it will be by the time we get this out. All right, thank you all for tuning in. This is Cecilia Rose, Reno Dino Valentino signing off. Until next time, do all the podcast crap you're supposed to do, like subscribe, follow, unfollow. No, not that one. All the good ones. Yeah, and we'll see you next time. Or hear you. You'll hear us next time.
Yeah.
Bye.